Okay, quick rant. Getting ready to go teach the maths, but thought I want to say something about forgiveness. I remember being a young person and being in a class and having to read The Sunflower, which is about the Holocaust and whatnot, but it's really a question about forgiveness. And what really struck me, and has stuck with me for ages, is that I was confused by the fixation on the worthiness of the person to be forgiven as a precondition for forgiveness. This idea that, one, somebody has to do something to merit forgiveness, and two, there's this entire question of whether or not a person is entitled to forgive, because apparently that can be interpreted as absolving somebody from responsibility. Right, so there's this question of, is the protagonist entitled to forgive this Nazi who's committed horrible crimes when he asks for forgiveness? And for me, that just seems really misguided, because my conception of forgiveness is rooted in a very different place, and has everything to do with my mental state and has nothing to do with the universe. And I think that when you get really deeply invested in some metaphysics, it's difficult sometimes to disentangle questions about your own mental state from questions about the universe, which is the danger of metaphysics in general. Not my cup of tea. So for me, forgiveness is about what's going on in here, right? Forgiveness is about, I don't forgive for someone else. I forgive for myself, right? Because forgiveness lifts a burden off of the person who is forgiving. The Buddha said that hatred is like drinking poison in the hopes that somebody else will die. And that's what it really feels like, from my experience, to carry a grudge around, right? So if somebody has done something that I feel has wronged me, I'm carrying that sense of being wronged around with me. If I forgive them, then it's gone. I don't have to have that experience anymore. And the experience of having a grudge, having a sense of being wronged, is not pleasant as far as I'm concerned, right? So I'm going to forgive as quickly as I can notice that this is going on, just because it's a better way for me to live. Is it also a nice thing to signal to somebody else that you've forgiven them? Yeah, it takes a weight off of their mind in many cases. So it's great. It can work out for everyone. So that's I didn't have the language at the time to express that, but that misgiving has kind of always been with me when I read that discussion of forgiveness, is that they're kind of missing the point here, as far as I'm concerned, right? Because if I forgive somebody, that doesn't change anything about the universe, right? That doesn't change anything about anybody else's relationship to that person. It's 100% about my relationship to them, and ultimately my relationship to my own experience, right? I forgive people because being a person who forgives is a more pleasant way to be a human being, right? Just leads to more happiness. With that, an active practice of self-forgiveness is an incredibly powerful tool to improve one's own experience and to have a happier experience. If you actually take the time to go, you know what, this thing has happened and I've been holding it against myself, I forgive myself for that. It lets you move forward, because no amount of wanting the past to be different can change the past. But what we can do is make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes that we regret in our past. And very often, hanging on to a story about how awful this thing that I did in the past was is a very effective way to distract from the process of actually putting a plan into place to make sure that that behavior isn't repeated. So we can get into these cycles of a bad thing happens, and then we have a whole collection of emotions around them, which generally get labeled feeling bad. And we spend so much energy on feeling bad that we don't have any left over to actually prevent the bad thing from happening again. And it leads to this pattern of behavior where people can have the belief that, despite the fact that they're routinely assholes to everybody around them, they really feel bad about all these asshole things that they're doing, so they're actually still a good person. And at the end of the day, they don't change their behavior. So, for me, right, practicing self-forgiveness liberates a bunch of cognitive resources that can go into making sure that I don't have to forgive myself again in the future because I'm not going to repeat that behavior. And feeling bad, as far as I'm concerned, is just useless, right? When I hear somebody tell me that, if somebody's wronged me and they say they feel bad, my first inclination is always, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about anything that has to do with relating to me, right? Because it's not making me feel any better about this. I don't want people to feel bad. And secondly, it's probably preventing you from actually doing something about this. When I hear somebody say, I feel really bad about that, what I'm hearing is, I don't intend to change this behavior in the future, right? So that seems incredibly useless to me. So, I encourage people not to indulge in that. Feeling bad brings us into a story that takes away from our ability to do good in the future. And that's useless. So stop. Don't feel bad. Do something about it, right? Make a plan. Don't tell me that you feel bad. Tell me, this is how I plan to make sure that we don't come to this juncture in the future because this is unpleasant for everybody. At that point, I'm like, yeah, awesome. What can I do to help you? But if you just tell me you feel bad, I'm like, that's probably going to be a waste of resources and it's probably not going to lead to anything productive. So why? Stop it, right? Forgive yourself. Move forward in a constructive way, and we'll all be happier. So, that's my rant.